It was a miserable day in Walham Green, gloomy and wind-lashed and rain-soaked, and it seemed every pedestrian for miles had taken shelter in this lion's tea-room. The windows streamed with condensation, and the air was thick with hot breath and the smell of damp wool and camphor and boiled mutton. I'd been lucky to get a table to myself, and I was keeping it to myself, spreading out my legs and seeing off with a cold stare any customer who dared to approach. Selfish of me, perhaps, but I was on the Queen's business, and expecting a guest. The waitress, a thin, nervous woman in her 30s, looked worn out and listless, much like the paper garlands that still festooned the place 3 weeks after Christmas. She could barely move between the tables, the place was so packed with customers, and their sodden overcoats and dripping umbrellas. Stopping by my table, she topped up my cup hastily, slopping tea into the saucer, but I made no remark. There are times when it serves to make a scene, and times to bite your tongue. Jakob was late. He was always late. I was used to it, and I understood his reasons. He hated me, and everything I stood for, and himself for associating with me. I found it amusing all the same that he always contrived to be exactly 15 minutes late. Even his contempt was precisely measured. And on the dot he appeared, wrestling with the door handle while rain poured off the brim of his grubby slouch hat, and a gust of wind tried to snatch the portfolio from under his arm. When at last he wrenched the door open, it forced a loud, brassy jangle from the bell, causing the young Latvian to freeze momentarily in the doorway. His eyes darted right and left, as if waiting for everyone to stop talking, and turn and stare. He was worried about being seen in my company, of course, but I was just as concerned about that as he was. That was why I'd been seated here facing the door for over an hour, discreetly watching the customers come and go, checking for familiar faces. But the hubbub continued unbroken. No one noticed Jakob, or cared. He quickly relaxed and stepped in, pulling the door shut behind him and shaking the rain off his hat. His face was as pale and pinched as ever, and when his coal black eyes met mine, he nodded, almost imperceptibly. I smiled, and it wasn't just to put him at his ease. I was genuinely pleased to see the lad. I liked Jakob, for all his wrong-headed ideas. I liked his intelligence and his passion and his sincerity, all the things that made him dangerous, in fact. He started making his way over. Barely in his 20s, he was so painfully thin he hardly needed to turn sideways to squeeze through the rows of seated customers, but all the same he jostled a few elbows and knocked a few hats askew with his portfolio. He ignored the angry stares. Jakob often mocked the English for their reluctance to complain, even when they were perfectly entitled to. And he had a point. When at last he arrived at my table, he did not greet me or offer to shake hands, but merely leaned his portfolio up against the table legs, hooked his hat on the nearest rack, and unbuttoned his shabby overcoat. The rain had soaked through its thin material and into the worn jacket beneath. He'll catch his death, I thought. I caught the waitress's eye and summoned her over with a lift of my chin. "Jakob, what'll you have?" "I am not hungry," he said, shrugging. His words were addressed to the air, rather than either of us. "Away out of that," I said. "You look half-starved and you're soaked through. Is that mutton stew I can smell?" This to the waitress. "Not sure if we have any left, sir." "A bowl of that if you do. Otherwise some of the oxtail soup." She nodded, and with a sharp glance at Jakob, his accent had clearly piqued her curiosity, she waded through the throng towards the kitchen. "So, Jakob, how have you been?" "The same, coughing my lungs out." His eyes flickered around the room again, checking for surveillance. Old habits die hard. "This city stinks. I don't know how you people can breathe the air." "It was bad the other day, right enough. Fog mixed with smoke, proper London particular. All the same, I dare say you can breathe more easily over here than back home." He didn't smile, but he did meet my gaze at last. "And how have you been, Mr. Melville? Cracked many heads this week?" "I have not. Sure, I employ people to do that for me." "Yes, I have seen them, hanging around in the street outside our meetings, sitting in the back of the hall." "Don't worry. If they need to crack any heads, they'll be sure to crack yours too."